All right, we are now live, coming from you, coming from the UWG online. Yay, we're famous, Amy.
All right.
All right. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that gradebook. This will be a short session, but that's okay. So we'll go over some stuff. Unless we get carried with our conversation, we'll kind of keep it short, which either one is fine with me.
Mhm.
The background noise here in our office, you'll have to forgive later, but it's all good. It just means we're working over here. I think that's what that means. So that's what I'm going to say anyways. That's my claim. We just do stuff. We're so busy. We always got people going. So I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop, a screen real fast, and we'll walk through the gradebook.
Okay.
But as I mentioned before we started, please interrupt me with any questions. No problem. Okay. I'm going to try to make that a little bigger for you. There we go. How's that?
Yep. Good.
Okay. So I'm in a sandbox course, just a play environment. As we say, the places you can bury your siblings, and nobody knows. So I'm going to just go right into the gradebook. But we can talk about some other grade things with this, but I'm kind of focused on the gradebook. But again, just like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt. So the way ours are normally set up, your class may be different, but it's most likely your gradebook is going to be under your grades tab and then grades. So
Right.
let me go ahead and open my gradebook. So there's a few pieces of this. I have a couple just sample people in here and some sample grades because this is just one I've been playing with. Before I dive into this part, I'm actually on the enter grades area. You're most likely, when you come into grades the first time, you're going to be on manage grades. Now I've changed my settings, so they're a little different. So mine opens up to enter grades, and you can do that. That's a settings piece.
And when you're under integrates, can you remind me one more time, David? Because every semester I make the same phone call. How to get the percentages to show up in those columns as well as the points?
Yep. I will actually address that in a little bit. So let's go through them first, and then I'll address that.
Okay.
So I'll go over just a kind of a quick rundown of what we have in the gradebook, and then I'll address that, each piece, if that works.
Yep. Perfect.
So under manage grades, I've actually kind of built some stuff here. So you'll see this discussions is actually a category, and then each of the items underneath it are what they call an item, a gradebook item. So I'm using weighted grades, but there's different options. So depending on how you grade and how you kind of have your grading scheme, you may want to use weighted or you may just want to use a point system. Either one is fine. So this is, again, mine set up currently with weighted, which I kind of like. I like how it works. You can do some different stuff with weighted than you can with points. So I have really two categories, discussions and assignments, and then some things that are not in categories at all. These ones, if you notice the way they're indented,
Right.
these bottom ones are not in categories. And I also have this note on top telling me, hey, something's wrong. So because, again, this is just one I've been playing with, I've added some stuff, and it's actually saying my grades sum's higher than it should. So I've got too much weight. I'm weighting up to 120, not 100%.
Okay.
So that's an issue. Because these bottom two I've added after, and I just didn't add them to a category. I'd probably showing somebody how to do it. So if I said, well, these two are actually assignments, or maybe they're quizzes, I can add a category and fix that. But we'll get to that piece in just a minute. Across the top, we have intergrades, manage grades. The schemes I won't get into a lot, but I'll tell you what that is. And then the setup wizard. If you haven't been in your gradebook or as you first start your semester, this is setup wizard actually is a pretty good method of kind of getting things ready. So if you click on the setup wizard, it'll kind of walk you through what you currently have, and then it'll let you change them. So I'm gonna go ahead and say start. Again, I don't know if do you use weighted or points?
I use weighted, so yeah, this is helpful.
Perfect. So I'm going to leave it at weighted. I kind of like that. Something to point out here, if you don't know, this question mark, you'll see it all over inside Desire to Learn, but it's pretty helpful if you're like, I don't know what that means. This will usually give you some kind of information about what that means. So what does weighted mean? And it gives you a little bit of information. Sometimes it doesn't have enough. Sometimes it has too much, but not usually too much. But it gives you a decent amount of information to help you figure that out. So I'm going to say weighted. So we know what they are. Again, weighted allows me to do the other categories, and to some degree, everything's kind of weighted, but if your whole grading scheme is points value in your syllabus, then points value would make the most sense. I don't recommend necessarily formula. Some people want to go and do all their own formulas for the gradebook. I guess that's a possibility, and if you have the mindset from the old systems way back in the day we used WebCT, if you wanted to do things, you almost had to. If you wanted to drop the lowest grade, you almost had to use a formula.
Right.
You don't have to anymore. Most of the things can now be done, especially in the weighted item. So the system's smart to figure it out for us now. So I'm going to say continue. And now we have calculated final grade and adjusted final grade. So this is basically the final grade that the students see. What am I releasing to the student? So the difference here, the calculated final grade is what the computer figures out for you. But if you're one of those people that said, bring me a bag of chocolate or, $100, no, I'm just kidding. I can adjust your grade. No, at the end of the semester, if you want to have some leeway with your grade and say, well, this one's, it's 2 points or 1 point from being an A, you can adjust that. Welcome, Bonnie. How are you? I don't know if she can hear us or not, but how are you, Bonnie? Can you hear us? Maybe.
I can text her if she can't hear us.
Yeah. She's probably still getting it figured out, but it looks like she's coming to us live from her back porch.
I am. It's my front porch.
Oh, your front porch. Well, how are you, Bonnie? Welcome.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late. I just saw this email and thought, oh, this would be good.
It's no problem. We're just kind of getting started. I'm just walking through the setup wizard in the gradebook.
Okay.
As I mentioned to Amy earlier, if you have any questions and you want to interrupt me, please do so. I try to tailor these to those who wish to attend, so they're a little different every time I do them. But that's how I roll, I guess. That's how they say that, right? So I'll kind of walk through this, but again, if you have some certain questions you want me to cover about it, let me know.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, the final grade released. So again, just depends on what you want the students to see at the end of the day, what you're going to give them as their final grade. If you want to adjust it, then keep the adjusted piece. So I'm going to leave mine as adjusted. I might want to take a bribe or two, so and I'll say continue. So the grade calculations, this actually is another piece. It's kind of important. So when you're first going through this, the first of the semester, you might actually want to leave it one way, and the end maybe another way.
Right.
So the drop ungraded items basically means you're starting them off at the bottom of the barrel. I mean, sorry, the other way around. If you drop ungraded items, you already have your assignments and your quizzes and your stuff set up. So they get 100 the first, they get an A, and it looks like their final is going to say, yep, you're doing great. And if you use the other option, the treat ungraded items is 0, even if they get 100 on their first quiz, their final score still looks like it's awful because all the rest of them are showing as zeros.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
And if I keep this keep final grade updated, that's where I'm at. So I guess it depends on what you want your students to see. I kind of like the drop ungraded items. As long as you are aware of that, so as you go through your class, if a student does not take a discussion, does not take something, you go ahead and grade that student anyway. So you can't basically leave undone things as just not graded, because that will skew the student's grade, and he or she will think they're doing better than they are.
David, this might actually be the answer to my question about the midterm grades earlier.
Okay.
Do you think? I don't know.
Yeah, probably. This is probably one of them, yeah.
Okay.
And we could create a column just for midterm and have it do calculations for whatever, so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can certainly. There's probably a few answers to the question. So the question that Amy was referring to is before I started the broadcast, she actually was mentioning the best way to kind of calculate a midterm if you have a lot of stuff going on in your class. So.
Oh, that's a great question.
So we can try to conquer that question. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and say continue. I like this option I have here, so I'll say continue. Again, the scheme, I only have one, this percentage. For the most part, that's probably all you'll use. The other reason you might have a different scheme is if you want, say, a letter grade scheme. So if you want to have one column in your gradebook that gives the students a letter grade, showing their letter grade, then you can do that. That's usually the only ones I've seen two different schemes as that. But normally this is your best method. You can certainly create schemes and stuff up under the schemes tab. But again, I haven't seen a lot of other good uses for it, so I'm going to say continue. And some of these are really just basic. How many decimals? I'm like, okay, I'll stick with the standards here. My grade details. So this is what the student view display is. So first, what do they see? The points, the weighted, and again, these little question marks on the side are your friend. They'll kind of tell you what that means and what the students are actually going to, what they're asking you there. I'm going to go ahead and leave most of these in here. Actually, I'll leave them all in here just for kicks and giggles. This grade scheme color actually gives the students just a real color view of you're not doing well or you're doing okay. So the whole like red is not a good thing usually. So, and again, this is the student view. So the decimal place, character to display, and then this bottom one, the final grade calculation, whether or not that's going to be displayed to users. Again, this little question mark kind of helps out. This is one of those times it doesn't give us a lot of information, but a little bit. It's just kind of showing them how their final grade was calculated if you check that. And I'll say continue. And it looks like I'm at the end again. It's showing me what I've selected and what I've decided to do. And I'll say finish. So that's the best way to kind of initially set up your gradebook.
Okay, so I have a question.
Please.
You can set up all of those before you even create all your assignments, or do you need to have assignments and quizzes in there before you start?
You can set up those before that, before you create your assignments, because that's really just how your gradebook will function.
Okay.
If you will. So that doesn't necessarily relate to your individual assignments or your individual gradebook items.
Okay.
So yes, you can. So when you're done with the setup wizard, you get back to this lovely option, which you can do some stuff from here, create new categories, create new items. I don't necessarily often come here to use from here. If I want to create something, I'll just go to my manage grades. So, but you can do it other place. So I'm going to go ahead and just click manage grades. And as I mentioned earlier to Amy, I have used weighted system in here, and I have a couple categories already built. I have some items already in here. They're already associated. So across the top here I have type. These are numeric. These are associated to discussions. These down here are associated to Dropbox or an assignment. I have a quiz. These are my midterm and final. So my midterm is actually an assignment, but my final is a quiz. So if you're doing a project, it doesn't have to use a quiz to be a quiz or a test. It's all about how it's graded.
I got into some difficulty in the spring because each category, it seemed like each category was supposed to equal 100, and I didn't really want it to do that.
Yep. Well, it kind of has to. So the idea, the category itself, the weight of the category doesn't need to equal 100, but the contents of the category equal 100. Does that make sense? So for instance, let me walk that a little bit slower. So for instance, I have, notice on top here, mine's saying I'm too much. I have too much weight. I have 120%. Because I have 40 here for this category, 40 for this category, and then the ones down here actually not in categories. So I have an extra, 45. So I have too much stuff going on here.
Okay.
So my categories, or my, not even this, let's not say that, not categories, I guess. My main items, whether they're categories or items outside of categories, they need to equal to 100%. Okay, so one category may be worth 40%. But for that category to be correct, the items in the category, say all my, let's look at, say
okay. So I think the way I had it set up, I had learning activities, and I wanted those to be 10% of the grade.
Okay.
But I only was going to count them 1 point each, and so I probably need to count them 10 points. No.
So,
yeah.
well,
10 points each?
The confusion is the points and the weight.
Okay.
Okay. Because it's different. You can count them 1 billion points if you want to, but it's the weight kind of that's going to make the difference. So your points is as you grade that particular item, however it's graded.
Okay. Okay, so it could be 100, it could be anything you want it to be.
100, could be 10, could be whatever.
Okay.
So I'm going to create a new category, and let's just see if this makes sense. So I'm going to just create a quiz category, and I'm going to add some quizzes in here. So up here on new, if I click the drop down, I have item or category. So again, category is my container. Item is the actual gradebook column. So I'm going to say category, and I'll just create one for quizzes. And my short name can be the same. I don't have to have that there, but it'll just be quizzes. And this category, I'll go ahead and just say 10%, because I'll say my final is 10% and other quizzes are 10%. This may not be a great grading scheme, but hopefully you'll get the idea. So I'm going to give it a weight. So it's going to have some kind of weight here. Down below in this distribution, I can actually distribute the stuff I add to this particular category. So I can say, I can manually assign the weights of each thing in the category. I prefer not to, especially say for exams. I'm going to say all my exams are worth the same amount each. They're all worth, whatever it is, they're worth the same amount. They're equally weighted in my gradebook. Okay? That's one option.
So I have a question. Is the weight a percentage or is the weight points?
The weight is a percentage.
It's a percentage. Okay, that makes sense.
Think of the weight as it's just a percentage. It's
Okay.
basically saying it's a 100-point value. You're cutting a pie.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to come down and say I'm going to distribute the weights evenly across everything. So all of mine are the same. Now I wouldn't have to. Maybe I had one exam was worth like 100 points, and I wanted to weight a little bit heavier than the one that was worth 50 points. So I could either manually assign it, or I could say distribute the weight. Actually, the second one, distribute weights by points across all items in the category. So if one has a higher point value, it also has a higher weight value. So that can get kind of confusing, but it just really depends on how you see your quizzes or whatever you're putting in this category, how you want them weighted. So sorry, I can't talk. I like this item on the bottom, distribute weight evenly across all items. And then I can also say, you know what, I'm going to drop the lowest one, or drop the 2 lowest ones, or 8 lowest ones. So I can easily do that here. I can say I want to drop the lowest quiz. So I'm going to say number of lowest non-bonus items. I'm going to drop one of those. So I can do that. Okay. And I'm going to come down a little below. So there's a few other pieces you might want to do. This is again the student view for this. What they want to display. I'm not going to change these, but I could. And I'm going to say save and close. So now I have a new category. And of course now my top here, my notes telling me I've added something, so now it's just worse. But now I can add things to the category. So for instance, this quiz, W4 quiz, this is really one of my quizzes. So I'm going to put that inside of there. And I'm going to go ahead and clean up some. There's a few of these that's not in the right categories. So what I'm going to do, instead of just doing these one at a time, which I could do, I'm going to select on the very top here, this little checkbox, and I'm going to click the double pencil. So I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to edit them. So I'm going to do a multiple edit. So this opens a whole new window. It looks a little confusing.
I love that. Thank you.
Yes. So this makes your life easier. So now I can say, okay, these are.
I'm sorry. Could you go back over how to get to that again? I was plugging in my computer.
You're fine, hon. So from the gradebook, I want to edit everything. I want to make sure everything's right. So this little top checkbox will select everything.
Okay.
I'm going to click double pencil here to edit. Multiple, so that'll get me in so I can edit everything.
Oh, okay.
So now down here, I can say, just because this is a discussion. So I'm going to come across here and I'm going to add that to my discussions. Maybe this, I'm going to call this part of my quizzes. I think it's actually a discussion, but I'm going to call it part of my quizzes. W4 quiz, I goes in my quizzes category. And my final exam, I don't want that in the category because it's going to be kind of weighted by itself. So I'm going to leave it out of the categories, and that's okay. In my midterm, if I need to, I can actually leave that out of the category. So that can be the extra 20%, right? Or I could put that as part of my category and modify its weight. Or these could be in their own category. Like the midterm and final might be equally weighted for your final grade. But I don't have that category yet, so I won't do that. Alright, and once I get these kind of where I want them, I'm going to come down and save this. So, or I can also even modify this point value, the weight value, or the point value. So right now, I have 40%. So you notice how these are grayed out inside of here? So these aren't necessarily counting against the total, but these inside of the discussions category need to equal 100. And they're going to because I automatically did that. I told it to automatically make them even. So it'll keep them even no matter what. I could add another discussion and it's going to fix it for me. It's no problem. So I have 40 and 40. I have 80. So I have actually, 15 extra weight, right? So I probably need to modify this a little bit. Maybe this needs to be 30, 30. I think that's going to be 5 extra. And I'll go ahead and save this. And I'll know up front because it's going to tell me, oh, wait, now I don't have enough weight. My grade only is 90, so I got carried away with mine. So no problem, I can fix it. And I can either fix it individually by just clicking on one of these and say, well, I'm going to give higher to assignments or higher to discussions, or I could make them both say 35 so that it gets my weight up to 100%. Did I lose you with that, or does that make sense?
No, that makes sense. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Because I want to have my learning activities, all but one of them count the same amount. But I want all.
Totally
I want, if that makes sense, I want all of them to be, the whole thing to be 10% of the grade.
Okay.
But I want one of them to count for 2 learning activities.
Okay. So you can either do that by putting one
by itself.
By itself if you wanted to, but
Okay.
that's a little bit complicated because then if all of them are 10% of the grade,
then it becomes 8% of the grade.
8%,
the rest
2%, yeah.
Right.
So if it was by itself, you just give it a 2% weight. It doesn't have to be in a category. It's all alone. The other ones are 8%.
Okay.
That's probably the easiest way. It's all about the math, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this one more time. I'll fix it. So I'm going to double edit this. And I'll just stick with 35 and 35 because, I'll make life easy on myself. But again, this may not be the best grading scheme. And I'll say save. So now my little note appears saying, okay, all is well in the world. You don't have a problem with your gradebook, at least as far as it not equaling 100. So does that piece all make sense as far as the weighting?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So once you have all this part done, so now maybe I haven't even created all my quizzes and stuff yet, right? And I'm like, you know what? I need to add a quiz, but I don't want it to kind of mess up my whole gradebook, and that's okay. Because if I add a quiz, well, it's part of my quizzes. Because all of my quizzes are going to equal 35%, or going to equal actually 10%. And this, again, I don't know if I like my scheme here, but so even if I add a quiz, it'll just make these other two that are 50, the weight will just go down to make it match. So it'll automatically distribute it as I add quizzes, or if I add an assignment, it'll automatically distribute it and make it right. All right, all good?
Yes.
Piece of cake, right? So that's kind of how that piece works. So let's the next step here. So before I bounce to something else, let's go ahead and look at just make sure you know how to get to these settings. Now we already kind of walked through these with the setup wizard, but if you get in here and you find that there's something that you need to change or something that makes sense, if you click on settings on the top here, this little gear icon, you can go ahead and modify that again. So here I have personal display and org display, calculation options. I have a few things. So this first tab, now this is how I see my gradebook. So this doesn't really affect my students. This is how I see it. So I can come down. Maybe I want to see the username. Probably don't really need to see this org defined ID. That's kind of a banner number, but I don't really need to see that. Their email. And again, I can have all these or none of these, or I mean, not none of these. You want some of these, but you can select which ones you want as far as what you're seeing in your gradebook. So make it all right. You can also repeat that final grades column with the first and the last of the list, and you can change your default. Maybe I want, when I come here, I just want to go right to enter grades. I've already set it up. I don't want to keep going to manage grades, so I can make it enter grades. Save that. If I go to the org unit displays option, this is really more like how its entire course is seen, so not just your view. And again, there's a few modifications you can make here if you want. And then again, if I decide I want to change something with how it's calculated, I can also do that. Maybe I get in there and say, well, I really don't want weighted. It's not working for me. I can go and change it to points. And the rest of these we've seen this already in the wizard. All right, so I'm going to make sure it's saved. It's all good. So that's across the top. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And I'm going to go over here to enter grades. So I have some grades, and you notice the color coding, like if people have bombed something, it's red. If they haven't done very well, it may be orange. So some of these aren't good. And what this little icon is over here is this is a dropped grade. So what that means is this is the lowest grade for that student, and this is automatically dropped. Because in my settings, I said I want to drop the lowest grade. So it does it automatically for me.
Oh.
So that's a pretty cool, neat thing. Back in the day when I first started doing this in WebCT, you had to go and actually do all the manual calculations in the gradebook. It was kind of a pain in the backside. This is much easier. So, and if I scroll across, I have my final grades listed at the front and the back. But this is my final grade calculation, which shows my percentage and my colors and different things. But I've already kind of went in there and did that. That's why it's there. Oftentimes, until you get in there and tweak it, it's just going to show up as an empty field, an empty column.
Hey, David, can I stop you right there?
Please.
So that final grades, I love that you have it in the front and the back. And so my question then would be, okay, so I can use that at the midterm if I just want to keep the grades as they are for that moment, and I can report those grades as midterm.
Yeah, I believe so. Why not, right? Because you're just...
And what if I didn't set it up correctly during the setup wizard time? Can I go back and then set it up later in the semester?
Yes.
So that it would not just show me that column right there, but that all of this...
All your other stuff, you're dropping the non-graded, that kind of thing? So
yes.
Yeah, you can do that right from that settings link.
Even after if I've set this up incorrectly, I can still do that at midterm.
No problem.
Okay.
Anytime during your course, you can click on settings and modify any of those settings.
And I'm at my point in the day where I have to sign off.
Okay.
And so I appreciate your help. This was fantastic.
I'll throw this at you real quick, Amy.
Yes.
If you may actually want to create a column, instead of using the final column, just create a column for midterm.
Yeah.
You can do that too. That way you can use that column to calculate what you want to calculate.
Okay, and how do you don't put a formula in for it to calculate. How do you...
You can actually. I can just...
So is that the best way to do it, or...
I can say new item. I know Amy has to run. And
Okay.
I could either say formula, because this will let me come and pick it. I can say calculated. So this actually lets me just numerate. It depends on what you're kind of calculating. But see this down here, I can just do this plus this plus this plus this equals this. I can.
Oh, okay. So under calculated, all you would have to do is list those items you want to include in the midterm.
I just come down here and pick them.
Yeah. Okay. That's going to be the easiest thing.
And it keeps the percentages that you have already set up by doing that?
Depends on how you grab this.
Okay.
Because
I might need your individual help on that.
Yeah.
Right.
You can sit down.
But it looks like if you check that box that says to calculate what's already graded, then that would be correct, wouldn't it? Won't that be an accurate midterm?
It'll be accurate midterm, Bonnie, but you can't save it. You can't look back.
Yeah, you might want to call it for itself because otherwise you look back. What was your midterm?
Otherwise, you have to download it in Excel or something. Right.
I really wouldn't recommend doing it that way. I'd make a column for midterm.
Okay.
And make it that
so a column for midterm.
Otherwise, like she said, you can't really look back and say, well, I don't know what your midterm grade was because you've actually done more stuff now.
Right.
I have one other question, too. Amy, did you have something else?
All right, Amy, we'll see you.
Good.
Bye, Amy. See you Monday.
All right.
All right, Bonnie, go ahead.
My other question is, I had some bonus points.
Yep.
And not all students participated in the bonus points.
Okay.
So I had bonus points added on during the semester because it depends on what's going on. I let students go to conferences or speakers or something sometimes.
Okay.
So you just go to enter grades. Go to new under there.
So you want to create a column just for bonus points? So
Yeah.
it's not extra on an assignment. It's a column you're adding bonus. So I'm
adding bonus points to the entire grade.
Okay. And I'm going to say new
Sort of
item.
inflates grades, but it makes them happy.
No problem. I'd say new item, it'd be numeric. And this wouldn't really have to be in a category because this is the overall. You can just leave it out of the category. You can just call this a bonus. And down here, again, you leave it out of the category. You're going to give it some kind, it's really the weight you're looking at, like overall, how much will the bonus points, what good are they? And then down below this, bonus. So right here, if you select a bonus, this entire column is bonus. So whatever you do is going to be bonus. So then you can set it up to make it.
So if I have more than one activity, I could have a category that says bonus activities, and I can put all of them under
kind
there.
of.
Okay.
So this kind of can, not really, because it'd be nice to make a category itself, but the whole category is bonus, but this doesn't let you do that.
It doesn't let you do that. Okay, so I have to add separate items for each bonus activity.
You could put them in a category and just give the category name.
So let me be sure I understand if I'm doing the weight and the maximum points correctly when we're looking at bonus.
Okay.
If we're looking at maximum points, let's say they could earn 100 points.
Okay.
But if I only want them to get 1 point on their grade, and if I'm using a percentage, then I just put 1 for the weight. Correct?
Well, think of 1, it's actually more like, because if 1 point wouldn't affect 1 point, I guess it would be 1 point of their grade if you think of their grade is from 1 to 100.
Okay.
That 1 is giving them actual 1 out of 100 toward their grade. If I weight it at 1. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because it's really, everything goes to 100. It's a full pie. So
right.
you can either
but
give them
this
a
would
little
be an
extra slice of pie. You're right.
So this would be an addition. So that's still.
But if I give that weight 10 and they miss 10 somewhere else, then they'll still get the full percent, right? Now if I give them 10 and they get everything else correct, then they have 110 out of 100.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
So you may want, maybe it's only 1, but that's not a lot. Maybe you might want, 5 or 3 or 10, whatever. I'll say I'll give it a weight of 5, which if they're close to a thing, it'd probably bounce them up 1 letter grade if they do all the bonus.
Okay.
Because each letter grade is basically 10 points. It's basically a weight of 10 normally, right? Like usually,
right.
If they're on the verge of that, 5 points, it'd probably bump them up a letter grade.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't want to make that real high because then, you have the
students
who did nothing, but they did all the bonus and got a great grade.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, I think this was helpful to me. What I need to do is just work on my course right now so I can remember it.
Okay, no problem.
Then if I have any questions, I can give you a call back.
That's no problem.
Okay, thanks.
Let us know. I'm gonna go ahead and stop our little broadcast. We've been live on air this whole time, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop this for future people. And just so you know, I'll send you this link right here in the chat, and I'll also try to email it out. But the little chat on the side has a link to our survey. If you want to go ahead and fill it out, give us some feedback, that'd be great.
I will do that.
You are awesome, Bonnie. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
We'll see you next time.
Okay, bye.